Hi, everyone. Welcome to 20-Minute Takes. I'm Heidi Waldusky. I'm the Associate Publisher for Ad Age. 20-Minute Takes is a special series that we're doing with Verizon Media, where we're discussing the topics that are most important to the industry right now. Today's topic is a meaty one. It's called Riding the Streaming Wave. There's no movies, there's no live sports. People are really trying to find new outlets for their passions, and streaming is really where it's at. We're seeing huge spikes. And obviously, as we talk about that, we're talking about the programmatic world and how media buyers can adjust their strategies and leverage insights. Luckily, we have a fantastic expert from Verizon Media to help us tackle this question. It is Vijay Rao, who is the VP and Head of Platform Sales and Strategy at Verizon Media. Hi, Vijay.
Hey, Heidi. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for being here. So, obviously, this is a tremendous topic that we're going to talk about in our 20 minutes. But before we get there, really hoping you can set the stage for me today on what is Verizon Media doing right now? What's y'all's positioning happening in this space? And tell us a little bit about your role and how you're helping drive all of this forward at Verizon Media.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. So Verizon Media Group is one of three divisions within Verizon Corporate, the other two being Verizon Consumer and Verizon Business. Verizon Media specifically has media and advertising technology platforms, plus we're a publisher, obviously, with some really big sites on the web, Yahoo Sports, Yahoo Finance, TechCrunch, etc. And then within Verizon Media, this is like Russian dolls, I am the head of sales and strategy for our DSP. So we have an advertising platform, a demand-side platform that allows brands to leverage our data in very unique ways to reach their audiences in a unified way across any screen or channel.
Thank you. I love a good Russian dolls reference, right? So we're going to try to tackle all this in about like 3 to 4 big questions. Audience tuning in, you guys can drop us a comment. We're also streaming on live on LinkedIn and Facebook, Twitter/Periscope. So if you've got a question, drop it in. We'll try to get to it when time allows. But we're going to get into these big questions. We also have a fun little rapid fire round. We're going to get to know the VJ behind the VJ, hopefully. But let's go ahead and get started. So obviously we've talked about streaming is seeing huge demand. Tiger King, I don't want to say it. I haven't watched it. I'm going to watch it. Let's not even talk about it. But set the stage. Oh, thank you. I feel like I'm not the only one. But help us set the stage for like, why is streaming so important to our industry right now? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I think for a lot of people that are tuning in, this is going to seem pretty intuitive. But there are two big reasons, right, that represent a perfect storm for streaming. The first is obviously you have a captive audience, literally the entire population that are stuck at home and have an insatiable appetite for content to be just entertained. And secondly, you have cable TV or traditional pay TV not necessarily fulfilling on those needs. A big reason for that is one of the biggest reasons people have pay TV today is obviously live sports. There's no live sports. So there's a big void. We were already seeing streaming encroaching into pay TV, but now it's going to accelerate. And just wanted to maybe give a couple of stats that really reinforce that. The first is Disney Plus, one of our customers at Verizon, just announced to the street 50 million subscribers in a 2-month window, which is massive for their streaming service. Juxtaposed against that, you have Nielsen reporting that primetime TV viewing for adults 18 to 49 during the middle of March, the start of the lockdown, actually declined by 3%. So just think about that for a second in terms of the decline of pay TV and the reciprocal rise of streaming.
And so what is that specifically like? Where's the interest level for the marketer there? What's the aha moment for you that you're taking away from that?
So I'll take a step back in a sense and tell you what we're seeing from advertisers, and I'll tell you a little bit about the advantages that they can see in terms of like associating themselves to this kind of new trend. So initially, a lot of marketers took a pause, right? Once all of the coronavirus stuff and all the pandemic stuff hit, a lot of people just paused, regrouped, wanted to figure out what the next step was. In some instances, the creative didn't resonate in the current environment. On a parallel path at Verizon Media, we did an interesting survey of our consumers and our audiences to understand what their expectations were around advertising. And two things came to the fore. The first was that in a time of uncertainty, interestingly enough, a lot of consumers wanted to hear from brands that they could trust. And then secondly, when they were hearing from brands that they could trust, they wanted brands to directly respond to the way in which they were positively responding to the community or society relative to their coronavirus responses. So there was a real desire in times of uncertainty to hear from brands. That's the first thing. And just anecdotally, I was watching CNN last night, ironically on pay TV, and I saw a Kellogg's commercial, another partner of ours, and the commercial was all around breakfast remaining unchanged. It's a constant. So in times of uncertainty, the one thing you can rely on is cereal in a way, right? Daily routine doesn't change. And it really hit home. And when we think about ad engagement has been declining during this time. Ironically enough, I think a lot of consumers are paying attention to commercials. So it's maybe not a bad time to advertise. So more specifically, what are we seeing in terms of trends around streaming? So the obvious one is obviously you advertise or you start to think about either the free ad-supported streaming services, people like Pluto or Tubi TV, there's Hulu, but those are like very obvious places, and obviously monies are moving in that direction. Verizon Media has an exchange, so we see a bunch of impressions across the broader ecosystem, and what we're seeing generally is lots and lots of supply in streaming video across CTV and OTT, and even mobile. We're seeing obviously soft demand because lots of advertisers are potentially pausing and starting to maybe dip their toes back in the water very gently. And so CPMs are pretty efficient right now. So if you have the appetite, if you have the right creative, maybe now is not the worst time to again get back into the game. The other places though that I think are interesting for advertisers in terms of opportunities, and places that absolutely capture changing consumer behavior, are places like gaming. So Verizon recently announced that they saw a 75% uptick in traffic over the Verizon network directly related to gaming. So and gaming encompasses a bunch of different things. A colleague of mine, Michael Brunick, is going to be speaking about that tomorrow very specifically. But think about gaming. You have Xbox Live, which we sell advertising against. You have Stadia, the Google service that just basically announced a 2-month free trial. And that's people actually gaming, but there are ad opportunities there. There are services where people watch gaming. That has exploded. Think about Mixer owned by Microsoft or Twitch owned by Amazon. Their ratings compared to cable TV now, they're seeing big increases, and there are advertising opportunities there. And there are also just casual gamers, right? And there are lots and lots of casual gamers that are playing, for example, Candy Crush on a mobile device, trying to fill in the time. And there are lots of ad opportunities there as well. So gaming, I think, is an obvious place people should be thinking about that, and it's a reach vehicle. The second is health. So think about gyms and sports clubs, all those places of shop. I have never taken a online class around exercise, but I did recently. I took a Rumble class on Instagram. So there are lots of opportunities, right, for advertising around those adjacencies, whether it's streaming, whether it's just health and fitness content in general.
Yeah, it seems like we're seeing a lot of, sorry to interrupt, but it seems like we're seeing a lot of different types of content being digested, right? It's not that, because there's no movies, because there's no sports, it's not necessarily a direct correlation into more sports, more movie-like content. We're seeing a really big different kind of spread in terms of what people are digesting.
Correct, you're right. It's diversified maybe content consumption to a degree. To that, news, right? It seems ironic that people who are running away from news would want to advertise in news. But one of the things from our survey was people are interested in positive stories around the response to the pandemic. So obviously you don't necessarily want to advertise next to death counts or necessarily flattening the curve stuff. But there are lots of really good feel-good stories about responses in the community to coronavirus, etc. And when you're advertising programmatically, obviously a lot of people who run on DSPs know there are brand safety vendors that provide whitelisting or blacklisting against contextual adjacencies. And they have done very creative things around targeting towards coronavirus. You can either negatively blacklist against negative news around coronavirus, but reciprocally you can also positively target positive coronavirus news. So news is not necessarily a place where you shouldn't be advertising.
I think that's a great point. It's not so black and white. You really have to look at the totality of it, and I think find a partner who can really kind of help you separate the issues and look for that positive and opportunities and creatively solve it.
Exactly. And then just because there aren't live sports, it doesn't mean there's not an appetite for live content and programming. So you're seeing, a lot of our favorite entertainment artists, music artists performing live concerts. There are ad opportunities around that. I'm going to make a quick plug. Verizon has a live streaming concert series called Pay It Forward. It supports small businesses that are supporting first responders. It's like a very worthy cause. And tonight at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern, we're streaming Alicia Keys' Big Deal live on Yahoo, Fios, Twitter, Twitch, a bunch of different platforms.
I love Alicia Keys. I feel like she makes me feel good about, the world. She's fantastic. If you're just catching us live, I'm Heidi Waldusky. I'm the Associate Publisher of Ad Age. We are here today with Verizon Media's Vijay, who's the VP and Head of Platform Sales and Strategy for Verizon Media. And today we're talking about riding the streaming wave. Streaming is super popular, and how do we help marketers take advantage of what's happening in that space creatively, but also with sensitivity to what's happening today? So giving just a quick little shout out for those who are tuning in: Justin, Sarah, Simon, Chris, Samson, Charles, and Christy. We also have a good question on LinkedIn from Justin. How is Verizon Media really leveraging all of these new insights and data for advertisers? How are some ways, because obviously this is a lot for you guys as well. I mean, I'm sure you're seeing things that you've just never seen before. How are you leveraging that?
That is a great question. It's almost like it was planted. But no, I'm sorry, I'm joking. So Justin, that's a great question. So I think one of the things that advertisers are relying on from their partners is a capture of how either consumer behavior is changing, how consumers are thinking about advertising. I referred back to that survey we did earlier, and just general trends in the marketplace that they could take advantage of or be sensitive towards. So at Verizon, we have a ton of user data, right, that we capture obviously in a privacy compliant way. We are a massive publisher of content, so we have a good feel for what are the types of content, what are the types of articles people are reading, what's resonating, what's not resonating, shares, likes, etc. We have a search property, so we can tell what are people searching for in any given moment in time. We have, Verizon has location data. We don't necessarily use it for targeting, but we can tell like where are people congregating in the real world. How does that help, in terms of the broader response to the pandemic? And then we're also a big provider of email. And one of the things that we can do, again, in a very privacy compliant way, is look at trends in terms of email traffic, in terms of the types of commercial emails people are receiving, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a bunch of different data that we can collect and a bunch of different data that we can use to make our customers much smarter about sensitive response in the way in which they should be advertising and connecting with consumers today.
That's really great. And that's a great segue to kind of our next question. I feel like you've touched upon this quite a bit, but really, we've heard a lot from other speakers in this space is now is the time for brands to solve, not sell. But it seems like there's a lot of different ways that marketers can really adjust their strategies. I think we're seeing some comments here on LinkedIn where it's a great time for brand education, a great time for marketers to try new things and to use the insights to drive more data-driven approaches. And that really is an opportunity here. Can you expand a little bit or just go back to some of your favorite ways where marketers can adjust their strategies?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things, right? If I were a marketer today, I'm thinking about two things. I'm thinking about how can I be nimble? And what I mean by nimble is, everything is very responsive to the news cycle. So what happens if we have a positive development in coronavirus? What happens if the financial markets shoot up 1,000 points or what have you? So you want to be pretty nimble. And nimble means being able to deploy creative, change creative. And then nimble also means being able to deploy your budgets across multiple screens very quickly for a variety of reasons, right? One, we want to be efficient in terms of work. And obviously there's a great opportunity for programmatic platforms right now. That's what we do, deploy budgets really quickly, very simply in automated fashion across screens. And the second is think about the workflows. The workforce, myself included, we're working from home, we're disparate. Maybe there's not as much efficiency in terms of the workflows. So again, you want to be super efficient in terms of deployment of your budgets, right? And utilization of programmatic. The second thing that I would say is interesting right now is, and someone kind of mentioned this on the screen, is even though it's challenging for marketers today, it's actually an excellent opportunity to test and iterate. And what I mean by that is think about TV and think about the kind of tsunami that's going to engulf paid TV over the course of the subsequent few months. You basically have live sports, right, not coming back anytime soon. You have potential cancellation of the programmatic upfronts. You have potentially, in a recessionary environment, people cutting cable. Cutting cable means decreased ratings, right? It means an increased, obviously, reciprocal advantage to streaming, which we talked about earlier. Now is a time, if I were a marketer, I would be starting to think about redeployment of those budgets. How am I introducing those budgets into gaming? How am I introducing those budgets into the fasts? How am I introducing those budgets into online video, etc.? And then not just deployment of those budgets, but then also measurement of those budgets, measurement of now having a much more complicated ecosystem of multiple screens. How do I manage frequency? How do I manage sequencing? How do I manage or understand return on investment, etc.? Does the creative resonate? Like creative in a different format in gaming, right? Where you have a 5-second or 10-second interstitial before the game. That's not your TV creative. So, there's lots of challenges right now, but there's also a real opportunity, maybe in a less pressurized environment, to start to test some of these things out.
I mean, I think that's, as a marketer, as a creative human, I think you're right. It is such a great time to, while we're encouraging brands to listen, it's also a great time to learn. I think you're right, without the added pressure of, the other external factors. Before we get to our last question, we are going to do our rapid fire, Vijay. As I said earlier, getting to know the Vijay behind the Vijay. I don't have a graphic. Our publisher, Josh Golden, had a graphic. It's my karate chop for rapid fire. I don't know. Okay. Are you ready? 5 questions, rapid fire.
Okay.
What are you streaming right now?
Not Tiger King. Narcos Mexico. Really good. Not for the faint of heart.
I love it. That's not the positive content that people are necessarily streaming, but I still like it. It's very good. What's your go-to work from home outfit? You're on the West Coast, so I'm thinking casual.
It is a good thing that this camera is not panning to below the waist. So shorts, flip-flops, and a work-appropriate shirt.
Love it. Okay, what is the last thing you ordered online?
Toothpaste.
Nice. Gotta keep brushing those teeth. And then in a Zoom culture, or really any kind of video conferencing service, what have you discovered about yourself thanks to all this video conferencing?
The camera adds 5 pounds.
I know. I've honestly never looked at myself so much in one day, as it's too much. So on an optimistic note, where's the first place you'll go when the social distancing is over? What's the first thing you'll do?
So it's a toss-up between going to the hairdressers, right, which is true of all men, I'm sure, or the beach.
Oh, very nice. Okay, great. Thank you so much from that. I've been learning a real whole lot today. Okay, so someone just made a comment. We hope Verizon Media continues to do this series. I hope so too. I feel like we're learning a lot from these tremendous experts we're able to bring on the screen here. Okay, so riding the streaming wave, any last advice to marketers looking to tap into the insights that we've discussed here today?
So 2 things. Remember, nimble, flexible. That's obviously going to influence the partners that you choose. So I'm a little bit biased, but it's ironically going to lead you towards scaled properties with programmatic and direct customer relationships. And then secondly, test and iterate. Now is never a better time to test and iterate. And we're seeing some of our clients starting to do really interesting things around some of the things that I mentioned previously.
Vijay, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. I mean, we love it when leaders are able to come on, I was going to say on the stage, but on the screen when we get back to our real events, and being so transparent and sharing your expertise with us and the Ad Age audience today. So we really thank you for that. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. We're going to have one more session with Verizon Media next week, Tuesday, April 14th. We're doing another 20-minute take, and that's going to be Ad Age Studio 30 editor John Dioso is going to be talking to Verizon Media's Mike Brunick about how marketers can reach the gaming community. We touched a little bit upon that today, but Mike and John are going to take you on a little bit of a deeper journey into that, and that's at April 14th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Vijay, thank you again. Thank you to the audience for tuning in. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you today.
Thanks, Heidi. Take care.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.